what he's trying to do is not just cut back the size of the government, but take these various agencies, and there are scores and scores and scores of them here in Argentina. It's worse than the US. And not just cut them back and fire some employees, but to pull them up by the roots and pour Agent Orange in the ground where they grew. And he's attempting to do that. And so far, he's fired tens of thousands of government employees.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 187. I'm talking to Doug Casey, who is a longtime libertarian investment advisor. He's also very much a man of the world. He's been to most countries in this world and certainly has a lot of opinions on what's going on with the prospects for liberty around the world. He's in Buenos Aires right now, so we're going to talk about Argentina and the other prospects for the world. How are you, Doug?
I'm reasonably well, and it's a pleasure to be here in BA. I expect I'm going to go back to the Empire in 10 days, and I'm actually feeling trepidation about that. It's probably a bad time to be in the U.S., but I typically do spend the northern summer in the U.S., and that's where I'm headed to.
Yeah. You know something interesting? I don't know when the last time you flew into the U.S. was, but now, you go through the general airport security theater when you go into the airport, but now you've got to go through the same security theater when you get on a plane to the U.S. So if you buy a bottle of water in the security area of the airport, you still can't take it with you. And considering that you're going to have an 8 to 10 hour flight, that's kind of a nuisance.
Well, that has been the case for some time, that you really can't, you can't take other than a very small amount of water through the ridiculous security. No, it's all crazy. Listen, I remember before this current hysteria that started with the events of 2001 happened, you could run for the plane from a taxi outside the airport if you had your ticket and get on the plane. And if you were there before the gates were pulled up, before the jetway was pulled away, you were fine. But now it's a bureaucratic nightmare. Flying. I've learned to hate flying, and I had top status with both United and American, but I just hate to fly these days.
Yeah, it's one of the great achievements of humanity, really, and we've completely messed it up when you think about it. I mean, human flight is pretty amazing, but we've just
and it's only going to get worse as we approach World War III, which I think we're on the actual edge of World War III. And I hope the nuclear element of it doesn't get completely out of control.
Where do you think this is going to come out of? Is it going to come out of what's going on with Israel or some other place?
Well, Israel's an element of it, but the Ukraine is, I think, more serious, quite frankly, because just yesterday, missiles that the U.S. gave to the Ukraine were used for an actual terrorist attack on a beach in Sebastopol. And you can't say that that's an accident, because these aiming and targeting systems on missiles today, it's not like a V-1 back in World War II, where it could hit anywhere once it was launched. These missiles were launched at a beach where kids and families are playing. And so the Russians have to do something at this point. I don't know what they'll do, but it's tit for tat. And at some point, the Russians are just going to be pushed too far.
Maybe so. Yeah. Doug, one thing that's interesting, though, is with the demographics of the world right now, you have so many of these countries now do not have a large population of what you'd call fighting age men. 20 something men. I mean, because there's been a baby bust around really, in North America, Canada, the most of Europe, Russia, certainly the East Asian countries. It's like, who's going to fight these wars? Because it's almost always, men from 18 to 35 who go fight the wars.
Well, of course, in today's world, increasingly the wars are fought in a high-tech manner. I'm surprised that the Ukraine has turned into such a meat grinder, especially for Ukrainian men, where nobody knows what the exact numbers are. Because, of course, in war, it's been said accurately that the first casualty is the truth. But from what I can pick up from different sources, the Ukrainians have lost 500,000 dead soldiers already. Now, that's a huge number in a country of 40 million people, where a quarter of the population, who knows, maybe a half, has already left the country. So that, but I'm surprised that the war is of its current character, because increasingly drones are going to be used. In fact, if you looked at the videos that Boston Dynamics has put out over the past few years, you see that robots are capable. They have short batteries, can only run for an hour, but of doing almost everything that a human can. And as computers get smaller and more powerful, we're going to be living in the world of the Terminator. So we're not going to need masses of stupid meat bodies to go out and be slaughtered. So I'm not worried about the diminishment of the world's population from that point of view. War is going to become more mechanized, more technological, more sophisticated. No, I'm not worried about that part of it, but I am worried about the war, because this war, starting in the Ukraine, but for all we know, the Chinese may be provoked. It's a chaotic situation. It's going to have computer elements. And of course, the whole world runs on computers now. It's going to be a crypto war where utilities are shut down, which can itself destroy civilization, and a biological component where something much more serious than COVID could be genetically directed towards certain populations. Now, this could get completely out of control.
It could be like a video game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it could. The best way to solve these problems, I mean, these people that run these countries, I'd much rather that they simply entered into cage fights with each other. It would be excellent free entertainment, and it would save a lot of death and damage.
Yes, that's true. Doug, you've been in Argentina for a while. What made you want to go to Argentina? What for you seem to think that this was actually a place where a libertarian revolution could happen, and maybe it is happening right now. So, what did you see there that attracted you to that country?
The kangaroos.
The kangaroos?
Well, what you're supposed to say is kangaroos, but there are no kangaroos in Argentina. And at that point, I come back and say, yeah, I was misinformed. You remember that line, and perhaps in Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart, where Captain Renault asks him the same question in regard to Casablanca. Anyway, Argentina. As you mentioned earlier, Chris, I guess I've been to about 155 countries, most of them many times, lived in 10 or 12. I'll have to add them up again. I can't even remember, frankly. Why did I come to Argentina? Well, of the countries in South America, or let me say Latin America, it's the most outward looking, it's the most Western, and it used to be the most advanced. It's got a great climate. It was, I think, a rational and reasonable choice. And I felt that even though it suffered under a type of socialism, or actually fascism, have to define the word fascism for most people, it's used improperly, for about 70, 80 years, I felt that it might actually hit bottom because of all the countries in Latin America. Argentina also has the greatest classical liberal traditions as well under the surface now. And I was premature because I started buying land here in about when? I don't know. It was about the early 2000s, 20 aughts. And I was early. I was way early. But I think I'll be justified in the end. So that's why I came down here. Also, because if you live in the US or Canada, if you're smart, you'll definitely have a crib someplace else in the world. Because I think the going is going to get very rough in North America in the years to come. It's getting rough now.
Yeah. If you bought land, land is, of course, land is one thing that's pretty much the safest hedge against inflation you can possibly have, right? I mean, even better than gold in some ways, right?
Well, yes, there are problems with land, of course. For instance, in Argentina, or any place in the third world, quite frankly, well, frankly, anywhere. If you have a large enough piece of land, you've actually got to defend it. You've got to maintain the borders. We bought, what did we buy? We bought 150,000 hectares down here.
Oh, wow.
Which works out to about 350,000 acres. That's a lot of land. And one of the problems with it is that people will squat on it. And the laws of most countries are that if somebody squats on a piece of land that you own for X period of time, depends on the country, title actually passes to them, at least for an area around where they've actually squatted. So it's not a bed of roses. But the land is so cheap. And if it's good land, this and that, it's okay. And it depends on how far down the road you look. But so you have to do something with money. So what can you do with money today to invest it, to make it grow? Well, the best thing is to start a business or invest in a business that somebody else has started, if you know the business and if you're sure the business is going to succeed. But if you just want to put money someplace and let it sit there, I think it comes down to either gold or land.
Or maybe you buy an apartment building or something like that, and then you get rental income out of it. But you also got to maintain that too, though.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the problem with an apartment building is that generally speaking, it's in the cities. And the way things are in the world today, I'm not sure you want to be in a city in the US or Canada, quite frankly. And an apartment building is a depreciating asset. It's if you own an apartment in the city, your renters will hate you. The government will see you as a milk cow. There's problems with almost anything today. There's no
Yeah.
question about that.
I noticed you said gold, but you didn't say anything about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin.
Well, I could have. I was a late adopter to Bitcoin. When I first heard about it, I liked the idea. It appealed to me. So I was philosophically aligned with it. But I looked at the 5 characteristics that Aristotle laid down for a good currency. And I checked the boxes. Well, is Bitcoin, Aristotle said, a good currency has to be durable, divisible, convenient, consistent, and have use value in itself. And Bitcoin is certainly durable, at least as long as computers work. Divisible, yeah, infinitely divisible. Convenient, yeah, no question about that. As long as you have your iPhone with you or something like that. Consistent, which is why you can't use real estate for money, for instance. Every piece is different. Yes, totally. But the thing that gave me trouble really with Bitcoin was that what was its use case? I mean, it was just an electronic digit. And it was so obvious, but it didn't occur to me. It's a perfect transfer mechanism. It's so much better than using the SWIFT system to ship dollars across borders. Instantaneous, cheap, relatively private, and avoids the risk of crossing a border with money. And that's why Bitcoin is going to become even more popular in the future, because I think the world is going to, these governments are going to increasingly put foreign exchange controls of various types in. So anyway, I got involved in it in 2017. And do I think it's going to go up from here? Well, I hate to make predictions because I'm not Nostradamus. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't use tea leaves. But the answer to the question is, yeah, I think it's going higher because the characteristics of a good money, and Bitcoin has them, are going to become more and more in demand as governments use their own phony electronic currencies and paper money and central banks. So yeah, more and more people are going to go into Bitcoin in the future, I think, and it's going to go considerably higher.
Yes. This show is not financial advice. This show is not tax advice. This show is not legal advice. This show is not immigration advice. It's my disclaimer. But yeah, so that's good. Have you seen how friendly is Argentina toward crypto? It seems like Milei wants to encourage competition among currencies. I mean, there's already some competition because the dollar is competing with the peso. But what can you tell me about that? Yeah.
Well, the thing with Milei down here is that he is a genuine libertarian. In fact, he's an ANCAP. He doesn't believe in government as an entity, as an enterprise. So that what he's said is that you should be able to use any currency you want. And that would include Bitcoin. Or if you want, you can use Zambian kwaches. Nobody will, but you could. So this is very good. I think he's stumbled in a few areas, and perhaps this is one of them. But the Argentine peso still exists. The central bank still exists, and he promised that he would abolish the central bank.
Yep.
But we'll see how these things will evolve. The rate of price rises here in Argentina has has diminished tremendously. It was running 200, 300% per year. Now it's running more like maybe 30 or 40% per year. But when governments come up with these figures, you can't trust any of the numbers.
Yeah, it does seem like at least that the peso is stabilized against some other currencies. It's not really going up like it used to be. It's that's certainly a good sign, and he's balanced the budgets. But yeah, I don't know if maybe he's just if he does still want to dollarize, but he's maybe waiting for, he wants to be absolutely positively sure that this doesn't create, cause some kind of crash or cause some kind of pain. Because I think one of the problems for a lot of libertarians is that every plan we want is probably going to involve some pain in the short term, but the benefits are in the long term. And that's why we don't seem to get elected, because nobody believes us. They want short-term happiness, but they'll get long-term sadness for it. But libertarianism is effectively the other way.
Well, that's right. A good economist doesn't look at just the immediate and direct effects of something, but he looks at the delayed and indirect effects as well. And there's no question that having a sound currency is not just salubrious, it's essential if you're going to have an advanced economy. And nobody's got it. In other words, the only way to solve this problem is not by stabilizing a fiat currency, which the Argentine peso and the dollar, they're both fiat currencies backed by nothing. It would be for people to use gold or silver or Bitcoin or something equivalent to any of them in day-to-day commerce, and not have a fiat currency at all. No pesos, no dollars. So that's the ideal, and I think that Milei would agree with that.
Yeah, I think he would too. What do we have? Do we have any? Since you've been around the world and you've been around a while, what models does Milei have? I mean, who's cut back the government successfully? I mean, maybe somebody like Václav Klaus in the Czech Republic or Mart Lahr in Estonia. Who would Milei look to for guidance on this? I mean, around the world. I mean, who's done what he's trying to do here successfully?
I don't think he's looking for guidance from any other nation state, because there is no other nation state that's, I mean, some of them are much better than others. There's no question about it. But none of them have an ANCAP philosophy underlying the government. So I think that he's looking to Austrian economics.
Yeah.
He's looking to the interpretation of the way the world works from people like von Mises and Rothbard and Hayek and so forth.
Yes. So yeah, I just wonder, because we had some situations where the government was rolled back, and after the Berlin Wall came down and things like that. So but as you said, maybe there is no blueprint for this.
Well, what he's trying to do is not just cut back the size of the government, but take these various agencies, and there are scores and scores and scores of them here in Argentina. It's worse than the US. And not just cut them back and fire some employees, but to pull them up by the roots and pour Agent Orange in the ground where they grew. And he's attempting to do that. And so far, he's fired tens of thousands of government employees. But you got to realize that Peronism, which is the ruling local philosophy, it's actually Peronism or Kirchnerism, which was the group that ran Argentina for the last 20 years. Their philosophy was actually formulated by Benito Mussolini in the 1920s in Italy. And it's a melding of the state with corporations. That's what it is. And Mussolini coined the word fascism, And what fascism is, it doesn't actually have anything to do with jackboots and so forth. It's simply the melding of the state and corporate interests. That's fascism. And that's what we've had in Argentina. And the problem is there are a lot of people who've planned their whole economic lives around that type of a system. They live off the state or live from corporations that live off the state, work with the state. So it's really hard to root these people out because they control the Congress down here. They have a upper and a lower house. It's actually pretty similar to the setup in the US. And these people, and the president in Argentina is powerful, more powerful than the president of the US in terms of what he can do. But there are things that require actual laws. And the Congress, and the majority of the Congress is controlled by these fascists. So it's not going as quickly as it should, but it's happening.
Yeah. Doug, one thing that a lot of people tell me that is happening, though, is that Milei is apparently, is a philosophical re-education really happening down there right now because of him? I mean, I see, you see his books on sale at places. People are actually getting interested in free markets. They're talking about Austrian economics. Is that happening right now? I mean, maybe we actually see a country where the truck drivers and the plumbers are they're reading The Road to Serfdom or something like that. Is that happening there?
Well, I think yes, I do, slowly. But you've got to remember that Milei was elected in a landslide, but he was elected by the largest margin of anybody. I don't know how many years, but decades and decades. And the people, I don't think, and people that think they know say this, not because people necessarily wanted to see a libertarian president, but because they needed and wanted, they were sick of being ripped off by the government. I mean, they're not stupid, the average guy. Well, when it comes to politics, I guess they are. But they realized what was going on, that all the feather bedding and the corruption and so forth. And they wanted a change, not just of the warm bodies occupying the government, but a change in everything. And so he won by a huge margin. And one of the good things about Milei, and there are many, is that he's always giving educational speeches to explain to people what he's doing and why and the way the economy actually works. And this is having an effect. So I'm optimistic. I mean, I've been down here for quite a while and premature. I'm still underwater with all the money that we put down here, quite frankly. But I think it's going to be a story with a happy ending. And more important than that is that I think Argentina is going to be a very safe and prosperous place to be in the world as World War III evolves. And it is evolving. We are going to have World War III, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's one thing. South America has managed to stay out of the world's skirmishes to a large extent. I mean, it's really been a safe place. I mean, at the same time, one of the problems with Argentina also is that it's so far away from everywhere. But I mean, you're looking at 8 to 10 hours to get back to the U.S. depending on where you go, and just as long to go to Europe. But yeah, that's definitely something else. Yeah, there's something else. So yeah, what
Yeah,
so
this place is the end of the world to about the same degree as living in South Africa or Australia,
yeah,
or it really is the end of the world. But it's very sophisticated and very pleasant. And although you can get everything that you want in Argentina, that'll even be more the case in the future, as
yeah,
in the future Milei drops import duties and import restrictions, which we have lots of down here. High duties, high import restrictions. Cost of living down here is very, very low still.
yeah,
And it's going to go lower as in the future he does things like get rid of the 22%
yeah,
value added tax.
yeah,
If he did that, everything else being equal, the cost of things, labor, materials, everything, would drop by about 22%.
yeah,
Uh, but he can only do that if he cuts the spending of the government appropriately. And of course, he's doing that as well. So I'm very optimistic. And this is already a very pleasant place to live. And I think it's going to become more pleasant and even safer, certainly relative to other countries in the world.
yeah. You know, the other thing I've noticed too is, uh, and I haven't been all over South America, but it seems like it's the only place where you can find trains. And why South America never really had much of a railroad industry, which I don't really understand why, but that is one place I actually, last time I was there, I actually did take a train back into town. It's a,
Well, it's because nobody with any sense would want to make a serious capital investment in
yeah,
a Latin American country because the rule of law is arbitrary, property rights are
yeah,
questionable, and Argentina uh, was actually one of the most liberal in the classical sense countries in the world 100 years ago.
yes,
And it was mainly the British that made the investment and built the the railroad system here. In fact, in the other room, in the library next door here, I've got a large map. It's like 7 feet tall and 3 feet wide. That's actually I framed it and made it a wall decoration. It shows it's a railroad map of Argentina showing all the places where the railroads went. They don't currently go all those places because the Peronists, these socialists destroy everything.
yeah,
So Argentina had one of the best rail systems in the world, and they managed to destroy it. And yeah, some of the rail system still runs, mostly around BA, but it's the usual thing: the unions and the regulations, and so
well, we've certainly destroyed the railroads in America. I mean, we still have them, but they aren't what they used to be either. And I think we'd probably have a thriving railroad industry if the government hadn't gotten involved.
yeah, that's
It,
exactly right. Now,
it,
people have got to
yeah,
recognize that the government is not your friend; it's your enemy. It's a
yeah,
predator that's hunting you down.
yeah. I don't think railroads work that well, say, if you're going from Dallas to Houston, but if you're going from Dallas to Seattle, I think railroads work very well.
Yeah, I've taken railroads. I mean, I rode I rode the Orient Express
Yeah,
in Europe from Bern, Switzerland to Istanbul years ago. And of course, I was just a student then, didn't have any money. So we had to ride third class with gypsies carrying their sheep onto the train with them and so forth. But and I've ridden the rails in the U.S. too, from Chicago to Washington on the Capital Limited, and from Denver to San Francisco. And
yeah,
in fact, for a couple of years, I actually rode freight cars Uh, talk about it, third class in Europe. This was riding a freight car is fourth or fifth class. Wonderful adventures. Took me 3 days to go from Grand Junction, Colorado, to one time to San Francisco, and one time to Sacramento. And no, I was Portland, Sacramento, not San Francisco. So yeah, I'm a big fan of rails from all kinds of points of view.
So you were just hopping on the boxcars, freeloading? Is that what you're saying?
No, boxcars. No, you can't do that anymore. Well, you can, but the railroads try to be careful about closing up the boxcars, just to make sure that hobos don't do that. So you ride other things like a grain carrier. It's probably the best kind of ride because they have little cubby holes in front that shelter you from the wind and the rain. And if they're carrying grain, they're heavy, and that kind of, oddly enough, cushions the ride. So yeah, it's an adventure that all young men should have, I think. You meet very weird, not so wonderful usually, but weird people on the rails, and you can see things from the rails that you just don't see from the highways.
I can imagine that. Yeah. That was another thing too, is it seems like the trains in in Argentina seem like they're a little cleaner than, say, New York or London too. That's always a good sign. If the public areas still look presentable, it means the people still have some pride.
Well, I think the best railroads in the world are probably the Swiss railroads, because Switzerland is, I'd say, probably the neatest and best organized and cleanest country in the world, quite frankly. But having said that, the whole world, as far as I can tell, is going downhill. It's like the capital stock of the world is suffering from deferred maintenance. And we can see that most in the United States and Canada.
Doug, is there any English-speaking country you think that looks like it's not going straight to hell right now?
Well,
maybe Guyana or Belize, but I honestly don't know.
English-speaking country.
Yeah.
Well, I lived in New Zealand for years, and that's kind of a special situation. And of course, that horrible communist woman, Jacinda, is gone.
Yes.
It has been replaced by a reasonable kind of conservative. But the trouble with so-called democracy is all these voters, they're irrational in their political habits. They blow with the wind, and they can elect absolutely anybody. It's unpredictable. So is there any, but the English-speaking countries are among the worst today.
Yeah.
All of them, all the Five Eyes, Australia, New Zealand, England, US, Canada. I mean, they're actually leading the way on the road to perdition today. It's really rather odd.
Yeah, I know that's and I don't think really anything in Western Europe can be salvaged. I mean, even Switzerland seems like it's going down the tubes.
Yes, it is. It's headed in the wrong direction. It's a very conservative country, so it's going downhill more slowly. But no, there's no question. And of course, Switzerland also has the advantage that it's still a haven for capital. It's not what it used to be. But it's still a, relatively speaking, haven for capital, and that capital helps to maintain things. But where do you go today? Well, Of course, I've chosen Argentina and also Uruguay, which is a small, mellow little country with only 3.5 million people next door to Argentina. It's quite nice. It has
Yes.
its own set of advantages, its own set of problems. But where else would I go? I'd look at Brazil, southern Brazil, which is actually quite nice. Unlike the rest of Brazil, Brazil is actually, it should break up into 3 or 4 or 5 different countries because the regions are so different from each
Yeah.
other in all ways. Um, I thought Chile might have worked out at one point, and maybe it still will, but Chile should also split in half at least
Yeah.
demographically.
I really liked what I saw of Chile. It seemed like it might be better off than Argentina. It seemed like maybe it was a little bit cleaner.
Oh, it's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like California. It really is. Uh, you've got the ocean, the nearby mountains, lakes, rivers. It's a fantastic place.
It seemed like maybe it was a little more, a little more pro family, which is why we don't have all the feminism and nonsense that we have in the West now too. Where men are just being demonized. I mean,
Yeah. Well, of course, Chile's, for whatever else you can say about it, it's like an island uh, separated from the rest of the continent by the high Andes uh, on the east, the ocean on the west, long and thin, the Atacama Desert on the north. So actually, it's historically been something of an island. And in many ways, it's a very conservative country. In fact, of all the countries in Latin America, it's probably the least corrupt, and the police are very tough, and the people don't dislike the police so much. It's a very conservative country. It's like, for instance, the Opus Dei, which is a ultra right wing Catholic organization, and it's powerful. It's headquartered in Chile. So, there's a lot of things about Chile, actually. And of course, its current prosperity is mostly due to Augusto Pinochet, the
yeah,
general that took things over in, was it 1980? No, it was earlier.
73.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 73. And also, Doug, that's a reason why you can celebrate the 11th of September. Always remember the 11th of September because Pinochet overthrew Allende.
Well, it's very politically incorrect to
Yeah.
say nice things about Pinochet, but he deserves lots of nice things to be said about him because he turned Chile from a beautiful but backward little shithole into the most prosperous country in Latin America.
Yeah.
Transformed it.
I was in a mall in Santiago and it just looked like it was a really nice mall. Just everybody seemed pretty friendly. I mean, if you can, the biggest drawback of going to Chile is like a lot of people said they don't speak Spanish, they speak Chilean. So,
Well, it's an island,
yeah,
and of course, this is, they've elected. I don't follow Chilean politics or
yeah,
politics in any of these places too closely because things change. But they elected a couple of leftists afterwards, and it's kind of gone back downhill in some
yeah.
ways.
I mean, Doug, it's been almost 35 years since we saw the Berlin Wall come down, and none of us thought that we'd still be fighting Marxists now, right? I mean, that's. I've said that a million times, but it's the truth. And the main reason why we're still fighting Marxists is because maybe the Berlin Wall came down, maybe the Soviet Union collapsed, but the college professors got worse.
Oh, much worse. Oh, there's no question about that. I mean, look, I don't recommend people go to college. I idiotically went to college myself only because from my high school, everybody went to college. And so, I was just a kid. What did I know? But if I misallocated that 4 years of time at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. But in those days, Georgetown and the professors were very conservative and actually mellow, but it's a hotbed of Marxism today, totally different place. And that's true of almost all the colleges and universities in the U.S.
You were a classmate of Bill Clinton there.
I was. First time I met Clinton was when he was campaigning to be president of the class.
Yeah.
And he was knocking on everybody's door and introducing himself and so forth. But even then, I was completely uninterested in politics and frankly, didn't understand why anybody would want to waste their time. I saw it as wasting their time asking for people to vote for him. Well, I didn't vote.
He was
even then for the college president, class president.
Yeah. It almost sounds like he was kind of born running for office. I mean, he's been doing this his whole life, hasn't he?
He's personally a charming guy.
Yeah.
When you talk to him, he makes you feel like you're the only person in the world and you're the most important person in the world. He's really smooth. He's really good. He really is.
Yeah, that's and sometimes I wonder if maybe the only reason he got into politics was because he saw it as a way to get laid. I don't know. I can imagine there's some stories about him back at Georgetown from that too. But
well, actually, not when he was in college. He wasn't notorious, at least that I know of. I mean, we weren't associates. We had a small class, but I never heard that he was a sex poodle back in those days. But I guess he's made up for lost time.
Yeah.
The one thing is that it was, what's that joke about him and Hillary, where anyway, she had a great deal to do with his rise because she's a real hellion, a power grubber. I've only been near her once, and that was at our 25th class reunion. And I thought it was very interesting that she was sitting there and she was surrounded by good-looking younger women, her assistants or whatever they were. And these girls looked like velociraptors, like watching and it made me think, I wonder if she's gay. And of course, there was a joke circulating is, why is Chelsea so ugly? And it's because Janet Reno is her father. A lot of people don't remember Janet Reno, but she was who was responsible for burning down the barn at Waco.
Yes. Yeah, it's Doug, I should ask you this at the beginning. How did you get into all this? How did you become a libertarian? How did you get into gold and all this stuff?
Well, when I was a kid, I think I was always, I'm a believer in nature more than nurture. So I think I was always libertarian and always kind of an outsider. But when I was a kid, I started out as a stupid kid, as a liberal. What's the proof of that? It's that one time when my mother, we were driving through Chicago and we were going through the ghettos. And I was kind of shocked at the the poor conditions that the black people were living in. And so when I got back home, I asked my mother, who did it, to type a letter to President Eisenhower. Can't you do anything? That's the first stupid mistake only an ignorant kid would make. How can the president do anything or should do anything? Anyway, I typed a letter to President Eisenhower. We put it in the mail asking him to do something about the poor black people in the ghetto. So I guess I was a liberal. And later, as I grew in wisdom and grace, I guess the first book I read that actually redirected me was Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative. Goldwater ran for president in 1964.
Yes.
And I thought his book, Conscience of a Conservative, was very intelligent. So I was a conservative then. And then the next step was when I read Ayn Rand's Virtue of Selfishness after I got out of college. I thought the book was and I still recommend it today. It's absolutely brilliant. And a short book, 100 pages or something like that. I had to put that book down after I read the first page on it because I was flummoxed that somebody had crystallized things that were in my mind but were inchoate. And that's what that book did. Then I became, for a while, an objectivist. But an objectivist isn't quite a libertarian.
Yeah.
So then as I learned about libertarianism, I was a libertarian. But the book that really changed things for me most was The Market for Liberty. Have you ever encountered that book?
Yes, I know that book. Yes, I've not read it. I have been reading that book. Yeah, I definitely know that book. Whatever happened to them?
Well, Morris is dead. Morris Tannehill's dead.
Yeah.
And Linda Tannehill, his wife, is kind of, from what I understand, she's kind of a recluse and hard to talk to or communicate with at all. And apparently, because I was in communication with Morris, but others told me that Linda had more to do with the book than Morris did. Anyway, that's what happened. But here's an interesting anecdote that most people would be unaware of, but I'll tell you this. It's that when I bought my first property here in Argentina, in Patagonia, in the Lake District, close to San Martin de los Andes, which is an incredibly nice town in the foothills of the Andes. It's Aspen-like, actually. Anyway, the real estate broker that I used, and he wasn't a real estate broker, he was a hunting and fishing guide because they didn't have real estate brokers. We were always talking philosophy at dinner, and he was sympathetic, but I wasn't quite making the sale with him. And I said, Jorge, what you should do is get a copy of The Market for Liberty. And by God, he did. I didn't give him a copy. He got it. And he read it. And it changed his whole pattern of thinking. And what he did was he translated it from English to Spanish and had it published in Argentina. Now, the story thickens here, is that Milei got a copy of that book, and that book converted Milei to being an anarcho-capitalist.
Yes.
So I wrote the foreword for that book back then. It's another story about how I found that book and what happened and all this type of thing. But so anyway, I take some credit for Milei being an anarcho-capitalist per se. Well, pretty direct credit in a way.
Jorge's been on here twice. He's been great. I love the guy. He's
is that right? Has he?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Jorge gave me your email address, so yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's been
good.
I've
Did Jorge tell you that particular anecdote?
Oh yeah. One thing you got to realize, Doug, everybody loves to talk about Milei. I mean, everybody loves to talk about a winner. It's easy to get people to talk about Milei and what's happening down there. How would Milei compare to your old friend Harry Brown, Doug?
Well, I've never met Milei. I mean,
Yeah.
I must have a dozen common friends and acquaintances with him down here, so
Yeah.
I could meet him easily enough. But I ask myself, what's the point? To go shake hands. Okay, super. In fact, I here's another funny little thing about Jorge Truco. I said to Jorge after Milei was elected, I said, Jorge, I guess because you and I are responsible for his getting the market for liberty, I guess we should have a free lunch. I guess we should have lunch at the Casa Rosada. And Jorge says, I don't think so, because Milei doesn't believe in free lunches. It's kind of funny, I think. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was a tangent. What did you ask before?
Yeah. I was just asking how you thought he compared to Harry Brown, because you knew Harry Brown quite well, and Harry Brown ran for president twice. I mean, Doug, this is the question we've all been asking: is what is Milei doing that other libertarians who have run for office done? Because his success is so far ahead of anybody else's. Nobody's come close to the success that Milei has had. I mean,
no, that's so true.
I don't take anybody seriously if they use the 3 words Ron Paul revolution. It's like, what revolution?
No,
he ran for president twice and lost. It's like, but this possibly is a revolution.
No, you're right. I'm an old friend of Ron Paul's too.
Yeah,
and Ron's a great guy, and he's done a huge amount of good. But
Ron Paul scored a meaningless touchdown in the 4th quarter, and this is a guy who won the football game.
Yeah. Well, as much as I like Ron, and I really do, I'm a huge fan, bigger fan of Harry Brown, who ran for president on the Libertarian ticket twice.
Yes.
And Harry was, in many ways, a genius. He was a super guy and very sound. And the book of his that I'd recommend, it's an absolutely excellent book. It's How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And Harry's not as well known as he should be, because he's really just super. But and we were actually pretty close. I'm sorry he kicked the bucket.
Yeah,
it's like he wasn't his fault, but it's like desertion in the face of the enemy.
Yeah, sometimes it happens. Too, Doug. I know it's
We're talking about libertarian presidential candidates. I don't know who the current presidential guy is. I can't remember his name, but the guy he's a complete clown, and it's just typical of the Libertarian Party, which is worthless. In fact, worthless isn't adequate. It's worth less than nothing. The fact that, was it the last time they ran the governor from Arizona, Gary Johnson,
governor of New Mexico.
Yeah, and then they ran William Weld. My God, a deep state criminal as the VP. And before that, they ran some nothing nowhere congressman. Republican.
Bob Barr was horrible.
Yeah, horrible. I mean, the Libertarian Party is an embarrassment.
Chase is a very good speaker. He's very articulate. He sounds presidential. He's anti-war to the core, as he likes to say.
Who's that? The current guy's name is Chase.
Chase Oliver. And Doug, the other great thing I can say about Chase is we've got 5 people running for president who are 70 plus, and Chase is 38.
Yeah.
I mean, this will be the first time I vote for somebody who's younger than me for president.
I know he's gay, and
yeah.
Is he limp-wristed? In other words, is he obviously gay?
He's not. He's not. I wouldn't call him a flaming gay guy.
Okay.
He's pretty much a
Yeah.
guy who blends in. You know, he always has on, you know, a suit and tie. He's always looking very professional. I mean,
Oh, that's good.
and gay men tend to be very conscious of that. They're always, you know, they're always trying to look professional and look presentable. I think he'll. I don't agree with Chase on everything, but I think he's got a lot of good things going for him, and I think he'll.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. It's
Yeah.
just that, you know, the things that I've read and figured, oh, Jesus, they've done it again. They've picked a nothing nobody to carry the flag. Who are the other contenders for the Libertarian candidacy?
Well, there was Michael Rechtenwald, who who's a good guy, but and there was a lot of division in the party. I think Spike Cohen would have been outstanding, but he didn't want to run because he seemed like he was the only person who really could have brought the party together. You know, I've often said too. I often said too that my dream ticket would have been Aaron Rodgers and Woody Harrelson. You know, if you wanted people who were famous to run, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers who refused to take the vaccine. He's also into Bitcoin. I mean, and Woody Harrelson, you know, after some of the stuff he said about the vaccines and stuff, I think if you're looking for celebrities, run those. But I don't know where the party's going to go after this. It's
Didn't I see Aaron Rodgers interviewed by Tucker Carlson recently?
he might have been interviewed by Tucker. I have to go look that up. Yes.
Well, if that's who it was, Tucker interviewed some football. It was a quarterback. Is Aaron Rodgers a quarterback?
Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback. Yeah.
Then it must have been him. He was very well spoken, very impressive, and clearly libertarian values. So yes, that might be a good choice because it's all about name recognition.
Yeah.
And if the libertarians were going to get some votes, they need to have a high profile person, not some non-entity. Because the whole Libertarian Party is, unfortunately, it's full of people that want to get into politics, but they'd rather be a big fish in a tiny toilet bowl, the Libertarian Party, than a little fish in a giant Republican Party.
Yeah. You know, I don't know where. I really wonder also about the way nonprofit organizations are structured and stuff like that. If they're ever really going to be effective at doing anything. Were you ever involved with the Nathaniel Brandon Institute? Did you ever go to NBI classes or not?
NBI?
Nathaniel Brandon Institute.
Oh, well, not exactly. I took a course that Nathaniel put on over a couple of weekends. And what the hell did he call his course? It was some kind of a touchy-feely type of thing. It was a great place to meet girls.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So that was the plus of it. And I got to know Nathaniel a little bit. And I always thought he was kind of a troubled guy, which is not unusual for a psychologist, because most psychologists and psychiatrists are actually mentally unstable, and a lot of them are actually crazy. So, problematical guy, and he never really grew out of objectivism, or did he?
Well, he got thrown out of it, you know, like a lot of people. It's
Rand wound up excommunicating almost everybody, actually.
Yeah, everybody except Peikoff. I mean, that was just, you know, Doug, that's one thing I've heard, though, is that back in the 60s, it was about 50-50. You know, you mentioned that NBI classes were a great way to meet girls. You certainly won't meet girls. You certainly won't see the libertarian movement as a way to meet girls now.
No.
And you know, I think, you know, that's another thing I think, you know, Milei has going for him. He looks like a guy who definitely knows how to manipulate women. I mean, and if you know how to manipulate women, you probably know something about how to manipulate voters too.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he's really I think he's sincerely being himself.
Well,
He's
yeah,
just
yeah. I didn't say he wasn't being sincerely being himself, but but if you can sincerely be yourself and you can get people to like you, that's because most people are. You always hear that. Oh, just be yourself. Yeah. Well, for a lot of people, being yourself doesn't work.
yeah,
But
that's true. But
Milei was
I have no hope for the Libertarian Party. In fact,
yeah,
I'm not even sure that I have any hope for the U.S. at this point because this coming election, uh, if Trump wins, the lefties are going to go wild. They're going to go crazy. And if Trump loses, the MAGA people are going to be absolutely sure and probably right that the election was stolen from them. So that we're looking at something that is going to be close to a civil war in the U.S.
yeah.
I'm not even sure we're going to have an election between World War III that might bubble over before then, and the nature of the election. We might not even have an election, and if we do have an election in 28, I suspect a military guy, a general, will win. No, it's game over, man. I mean,
Maybe so. Yeah. Doug, I think we might see very much one thing is at least I think there's I also, what do you think about, the popularity of a guy like Andrew Tate?
well, I can't say I know much about him. I've listened to an interview that he did, and obviously he has some pluses. Like I think he wants men to be men, and but on the other hand, to me, how could anybody convert to Mohammedanism, which is what he's done?
Yeah, I know.
That's actually insane. And when it
Yeah,
comes to politics, or it's a totally corrupt and stupid cult.
yeah. I think a lot of people are just almost adopting belief systems because it's some kind of new fad or something. I don't know what. I think the popularity of Tate has to do with a lot of things where you just have, as I said, every time a woman falsely accuses a man, Andrew Tate gets another follow on Twitter. It's this culture where I think a lot of men nowadays have little or no hope of ever getting married, and I think that's something that a lot of men really do want. They get a little older and they realize they want to settle down and build something and have a legacy. Because if you don't have kids, what is your future? What reason do you have really to leave a better world?
It's a real social problem that we have in the West. What you just said, you're quite correct. The women have been told that they don't need men. In fact, they should hate men for all kinds of bullshit reasons. And the men have been feminized and turned into soy boys.
Yeah.
So, and people are looking for something to believe in, something that seems at least non-corrupt and mildly sane. And this would account for Tate's popularity because some of the things he says are sane.
Yeah.
So, but we have a real underlying problem in the West. It's not just the politics and the philosophy, it's the way men and women relate to each other, which is sick.
And I also think you have this, because I don't think this coronavirus nonsense happens unless your culture has already become completely gynocentric. I don't think, and that was one thing I noticed interesting was that all of these red pill guys like Tate were all saying that this is just a scaremongering psyop and it's all baloney. I mean, they were 95% of them were in agreement on that, just saying they're just trying to scare you into giving up your liberty. It's not.
No, you're right. The world has been captured by stupid hysterias,
Yeah.
dangerous hysterias. Like the COVID thing was one, and of course, climate change or global warming is the other biggie.
Yeah, and of course now it's becoming, oh my gosh, immigrants are coming. It's uh, and not to mention, Doug, you're older than I am. You can remember when I saw a sign in the Austin library said, children under 10 years old are not allowed to be here without adults. And it's like, I can remember going to the library in my hometown by myself, maybe when I was 6 or 7 years old.
Of course, as you should.
Yeah. So it's a safe bet that 100 years ago, a 15-year-old was more mature than a 25-year-old today.
Well, the civilization itself has been degrading. And of course, Western civilization is absolutely the best thing that's ever happened to the world. And no other civilization is even remotely comparable to Western civilization as far as the good things that it has to offer. I mean, sure, I like lots of things. I used to live in Hong Kong for years. I love a lot of things about China. But when you get right down to it, okay, let's see, what's good about China? Well, Tai Chi and Kung Fu are good. Mugu Gai Pan and General Chow's chicken, wonderful. And that's about the end of it with China. And India has even less. Everything in the world that's good, basically, especially philosophical concepts, has come from the West. That's being washed away at this point.
Yeah. It seems like, Western civilization is the first civilization that's really acknowledged its mistakes, and now it feels like, well, we got to completely beat ourselves up for these mistakes. Whereas
it's the only one. It's the only one that's done anything good, and now it's washing its hands of all the good things.
And you see these lefty gay trans activists who are wondering, like, why do these Muslims hate us? It's like, like you see, trans activists going on saying, oh, we got to get Palestinian liberation, or even feminists saying, feminists talking about how wonderful these Islamic cultures are. It's like, what the heck are you?
Oh, it's nuts. It really is. It really is. It really is crazy.
I've been meaning to ask too, Doug, what do you think about El Salvador?
Well, that would have been the last country that I would have picked to live or do anything with. I mean, it's a little shithole with all the crime and overpopulation, and it's the archetypical banana republic. But I was there before Bukele.
Yeah.
And it appears, I haven't been there since either, but it appears that locking up 65,000 presumably hardcore criminals has changed the place.
Yeah, I hear that from people saying things like, I'm proud to be a Salvadorian. One thing I can say, at least, although I haven't been everywhere, San Salvador is the worst traffic city I've ever seen. That's saying a lot. Yeah.
Well, at least they have cars. So yeah. I wish, I don't know what Bukele's underlying philosophy really is. I don't know too much about him, but it appears everything's going or most things in the right direction. So I wish him well. But it's still not a place where I would transport myself. Better to go to Argentina or Uruguay, or maybe Chile or southern Brazil, because you're talking about a place that's culturally very mellow and desirable. And, El Salvador, listen, I'm asking myself, okay, that's good for Bukele. He's locked up a bunch of criminals and that. But wait a minute, how long can you keep 65,000 gang members locked up in a prison? They're going to have to be released, or they're going to break out or something. I don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe the country can develop enough, though, that they might be able to figure something out. It is going to be interesting to see what happens. smaller countries can rise and fall a lot faster than the bigger countries. It's just like stocks, really.
Well, I like little countries for lots of reasons,
Yeah.
frankly. And
It's
that's
an
another
interesting
reason I
place.
like Argentina,
Yeah.
because although it's the seventh largest country in the world with only 45 million people, and
Yeah.
most of them live in and around Buenos Aires.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I noticed too a lot of the, and I went out to Cordoba, and it just seemed like Buenos Aires was just taking in all this wealth, and because Cordoba seemed more like it seemed more like I was in Mexico than I was in Buenos Aires. You could just tell it wasn't doing as well.
Well, of course, the problem is all the political power is
Yeah,
really in Buenos Aires. Therefore, all the money flows to Buenos Aires.
yeah, and that's the way in quite a few South. I mean, Lima is about 1/3 the population of Peru. I think it's that way with Santiago in Chile, and maybe that way with
Yeah, I
Quito in
think so.
Ecuador. Colombia, the cities are kind of spread out a little bit. You don't necessarily have everything concentrated in Bogota, but it's in some
Well,
of
and
these.
everybody wants to live in Medellin, actually, in
Yeah,
Colombia.
yeah, yeah. Medellin is nice. Another nice thing about Medellin is it's not quite as high. Oh, geez, I don't know if I'll ever go back to Bogota just for that reason a little bit.
Bogota is, it's 8,000 feet plus.
Yeah, I had massive headaches when I was there. I don't know if I'll ever go back there. It's a and the two national capitals that are higher are Quito and La Paz.
That's right. I think we're talking 10,000 feet there.
Yeah. I have noticed though, as I'm better off if I'm out in the country. Maybe it's because I have fresh air. But yeah. So yeah. So what do you think about Mexico by chance? Any hope there, or do you think Mexico's pretty much done? Too close to America?
Apparently, this woman that they've elected
Oh
is
gosh.
she's a real commie.
Yeah.
So the prognosis is not good for Mexico.
Is there any other place in the world you might be optimistic about?
Well, I lived in New Zealand for years. I
Yeah.
still like New Zealand.
It's a pretty place.
A great place. And
I
I
have
like the
been used to
Orient.
once.
I do like the Orient. And my favorite there is Thailand. It's really different from any other place.
Yeah.
And kind of oddly enough, it's at the antipodes of Argentina, the exact opposite end of the world, totally the opposite end. But not only that, but it's an opposite culturally too, in so many ways. But I like them both.
What do you think about Malaysia?
I'm going to Malaysia in September again. Haven't been there for a few years.
Nomad capitalist?
Yeah, that thing, right.
That's why I've been asking, because he's had that conference there twice now. He must see something that he likes there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll find out. I haven't been to KL for, my God, 15 years at least. But I'm sick of traveling anyway, Chris. Don't want to
It gets old after a while.
It does. It gets sick. Anyway, kind of been there, done that. But I got to run.
Okay, Doug, it's been great having you. Where could we find you? KCResearch.com, I believe. And
yeah, if people would like to know, the KC Research, I sold that and it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
They should go to internationalman.com.
Yes.
Where I have it's an excellent free blog site. I write a lot, and so do other guys. Also, I have a podcast with Matt Smith called Doug Casey's Take on YouTube. So those two things. And I suggest people read my novels, Drug Lord, Speculator, and Assassin. They're available through Amazon, and they're excellent, if I do say so myself.
Good work. Yeah. Getting those novels out well. Okay. It's been great having you on here, Doug. Please go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute right now. This has been Fountainhead Forum 187. Thank you, Doug Casey. We're out.